Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I'm going to be talking about some SPFBO champions, and this is for the SPFBO Champions League. The contest has been going for a decade. There are 10 past champions, and now we are pitting these 10 champions against each other to determine which one will be the champion of champions. Now, if you're not familiar with SPFBO, it's a wonderful contest that the author Mark Lawrence started to shine a light on self-published fantasy. And every year, a great book has emerged from the contest. And it's a real privilege for me to be part of the judging for this tournament of champions. Have been so just blown away by the quality of these books, frankly, and that leads me to make this one observation about the difficulty of this task, because these are all fantastic. You can have little quibbles here and there with, of course, any book, self-published, traditionally published, you name it. There is no such thing as a perfect book anywhere. But these are really great books, and ranking them according to my preference, what I try to do as a judge is I set aside my personal biases to the extent that I can, and I try to rate these books on the basis of how well they achieve what they are setting out to do, what the author is trying to do with them. And I think I'm pretty good at that usually, but I have been confronted with the fact that this gets a lot more difficult when I'm judging a bunch of really high quality books. So please keep that in mind when I'm rating these and ordering them from 1 to 10. Number 10 is still a fantastic book. At the end of the day, these are all champions. They deserve, every single one of these deserves their status as an SPFBO champion. So now that I have that little caveat out of the way, let me talk about the books first. I'm rating and reviewing 4 of them today, and that will bring me to 7 total. So at the end of my 4 reviews for today, I will review what my order is for the 7 books that I have gone over thus far for the contest, leaving me with 3 more to order in my own personal preference as to the best of my ability. But this is hard. I just want to emphasize this is really hard. But let me gush a little bit about each of these books. So Orconomics by Zachary Pike, I should say. This is a satire, and it achieves what every great satire does, which it makes some really interesting commentary on society. But it's set up as it feels very much like a D&D campaign. And this is very deceptive at first if you're tempted to read it as such. Not that there's anything wrong with a D&D campaign. I loved D&D back in the day. But there's just a lot more depth to this than you might at first think because of the satirical nature of it. You do have a quest party that becomes a found family in this, so that is also a really great element of this. There's some really nice, heartfelt, real bonding going on here. But you also have, as I was saying, this social commentary with a great deal of humor as well. And a lot of darkness and some surprising pathos in here. The main character, the main POV here is Gorm Ingerson, a dwarf who has seen better days, let's put it that way. He's been a hero in the past, a hero in this world, this world is called Arth, by the way, Earth without an E. But he has been a member of the Heroes Guild in the past, which is the official, let's say, state-approved bureaucracy that gives its blessing to heroes who go out and kill entities, mostly, well, not exclusively, but mostly the approved beings for killing. That would include orcs and goblins and such, right? But there's more to this than you might at first think. This is run by contracts, and there is an element of, let's say, corruption here, and a lack of empathy for these supposed undesirables in society, who, by the way, the orcs and goblins and these guys that can apply to be what's called NPCs in this world, which means that essentially they have to go around with a piece of paper that says that they're not a fully integrated, accepted part of society, but you can't just kill them upon sight. So there is a real second class here, let's say, in this world. And I think that Pike really succeeds in making some social commentary through this idea of having these NPCs in this world. But Gorm and the other misfits who are wrangled into the quest that has been foisted upon them at least in part by the Temple of Almatra. But also there's a lot more going on, a lot more strings being pulled than it might first seem. And there is a real plot behind it, a plot as an intrigue and that kind of thing. Gorm initially sees this as really a chance for redemption, but perhaps this quest that he is almost forced on is in fact a chance at redemption in a way that he doesn't expect. So there is some real bonding, and there are some real heartfelt, beautiful moments in this story and some losses, but it is above all really a very keen social commentary. Now, let me talk about the next book that I read, and that is The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. This is the most grimdark of the entries of the champions that I have read thus far. It is actually biker gang meets fantasy, which sounds pretty damn cool, and it is. So you have a group of protagonists who are half-orcs. They're called the Grey Bastards. There's one of these bands of half-orcs that essentially ride literal hogs. So we're not talking about Harley Davidsons. We're actually talking about giant pigs, in which they steer with their tusks. It's fun. That element of it is really fun. And it, by the way, is a great opportunity for some very special bonds between the riders and their hogs. So you have the animal companion trope going on in there, at least a wrinkle on it, that's an element of it that I actually really liked a lot. But yeah, these half-orcs, they are the kind of the dregs of society. They're not fully accepted by humans, and they're definitely not accepted by orcs. They're killed on sight by orcs. So yeah, it's not a pleasant world for the Grey Bastards at all. But Jackal and Fetch and Oates, some of the close friends here that we follow along, Jackal being the main protagonist, but he is nothing without Oates and Fetch, or fetching. But yeah, there's some really wonderful friendships in here, in this really rough, gritty world that we're thrown in here with the Grey Bastards. It is, in a way, I would say it's grimdark with a heart. You could call it that. But they are, along with the rest of the Grey Bastards, forced to patrol the Lot Lands. Now, the Lot Lands are this harsh wasteland that lies in between the orc hordes on the one hand and human civilization on the other hand. And there is also going on during all this a sort of internal struggle within the Grey Bastards, especially for leadership. And there is that sort of blows all this into smithereens is a larger quest for survival that really upturns everything that Jackal and his friends believed about their world. So there are a lot of twists in here, a lot of twists. I mean, they're just maybe even too many twists. There's a lot of twists in here. But if you like twists, you're in for a bunch of them here. And there's also a lot of grit. But also some humanity in there, which is interesting because they are half orcs after all. But yeah, really well executed story. And then we have The Lost War by Justin Lee Anderson. Now, with this one, it's almost like the less I say, the better, because a lot of the virtue in this reading experience for me lies in discovering what Anderson was actually up to. But I will say that if you read this book and you feel much like I did that the plot is somehow lacking direction, or that it's almost listless, or there's no impetus, actually the last 5% of this book could completely change your mind and kind of blow you away, actually. So it really will change your perspective, to say the least. It's one of those things where you could say, serial DNFers, beware, because if you give up on this book, you're really going to miss the point of it. You're not going to understand it. You have to finish this one to really understand what Anderson was going for. There were many moments in the book where characters say something like, "What are we doing here?" And I was like wondering the same thing. But by the end, that question was very much answered for me. Now, I'm not going to say any more about that because it really is a fun experience to read the book. But I will say that the Kingdom Eden, Eidyn, I believe it's pronounced Eden, is in a state of very fragile peace after a very costly war. And there are threats breaking out like brush fires everywhere. Now, the king's envoy, the Drui, Aronach. Now, Drury is like a druid, a magic user, mage, what have you. Aronach is the protagonist, the main character, and he's sent on a quest with some fellow adventurers to restore a neighboring queen to her throne. But things quickly turn really bizarre, really strange here. There are some encounters that just don't make sense, really, and there's a lot of twists within twists here, with mysteries piling on mysteries. But there's also, I would like to say, some heartfelt bonding. And when there's a loss in this story, you do feel it. And I do appreciate as well the exploration of othering and prejudice in terms of the treatment of druids like Aronach, because there is a social prejudice against these magic users, fear of the other and all of that. So that is also handled really well. And finally, we have The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids by Michael McClung. Now, this is probably the longest title among all the champions and the shortest book. So I thought that was kind of great. And you have in the main character Amra Thetis, a professional thief who grew up in poverty, and she is a wonderful example of the rogue with a heart of gold. She finds herself way in over her head when a friend and fellow thief asks her for a bit of a favor. And you know it's one of those favors that's going to get the story rolling. It's going to get the protagonist in some deep water here. Yeah, there's just to give you a sense of what to expect here, or without spoilers. Yeah, there's an immortal assassin. There's a creepy necromancer. There are mad gods and an artifact. Importantly, an artifact at the heart of this, with some really disturbing and potentially world-ending power. So all of this poor Amra is dealing with, among other things. It is, in a way, it's part revenge tale as well, but also there's some mystery thrown in there. And I do want to emphasize, too, that as with some of these others, this is very much an introduction to a series. This is the beginning of a series. And I do see some real potential there, but because this was a very short one, it's more of like setup for this character, this world. I mean, it has a plot, a story that starts and finishes as well. But I feel like I would love these characters even more if I were to keep reading in the series, which I would very much like to do. And a special shout out to the relationship between Amra and the mage Holgren. That is one aspect of this that I really did enjoy, and I would hope to see more of that in potentially in future books. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on these 4 excellent books. Now comes the part I hate, the part where I rank them. I put them in order, so I'm just going to give the order of all 7 books to make this easier for everybody. So where I am currently with the, again, I'll have 3 more to do in December, but these are the 7 that I have so far. So my number 1, which I previously have talked about already, is By Blood, by Salt. That is remaining number 1 for me. However, there is a new number 2 for me, and that is going to be Orconomics. So my number 2 spot is Orconomics by J. Zachary Pike. And for number 3, Murder at Spindle Manor is going to be number 3. And number 4, The Sword of Kaigen. At number 5, The Lost War by Justin Lee Anderson. This was a real tough one for me. Numbers 5 and 6, I was going back and forth, but it's going to be number 5 for that ending. Justin Lee Anderson's The Lost War at number 5. And number 6, The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. That's grimdark with heart. The motorcycle gang on actual hogs. If they're half orcs, fun stuff. So yes, The Grey Bastards is number 6. And finally, at my number 7, still a great book. Please don't get me wrong. This is a wonderful, lots of hijinks, lots of fun. The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids, number 7. So that's what I've got so far for the SPFBO Tournament of Champions. Stay tuned. I will have the last 3 and put them in the order somewhere in there. Again, this is probably only going to be harder as I get down to the last 3, but I'm doing my best here. But I appreciate you being here and listening, and go check out these fantastic books. But that is it for me for now. Until next time.